Good morning. Today we're going to talk about perennial onions. So these are members of the onion family that you can grow and that will keep growing year after year once you plant them with minimal care. Some of them take a little bit of help to maintain this perennial kind of growth pattern, but in general, these are a whole lot easier to grow than onions, which either need to be grown from seed or from onion sets, which are a seed that somebody else started for you every year. These are different. So, and each of these different 5 types that I'm going to talk about today has slightly different characteristics. So I'm going to start with the more familiar perennial onions, and then we'll move to some that you may not have heard of. So first off, at least I've always known about chives, and I think that this is a very common ingredient in recipes, so you're probably familiar with chives too. When I was a kid, we used to grow them outside of our back door, so if we needed some for the kitchen, we would just go out and cut a clump and bring them in. So very easy, handy, onion-flavored addition to any meal, and it chops up into very small, attractive little green slices, which are a nice way to add flavor and color to your food. So these grow in clumps which slowly widen from the center, and the chives themselves split and form these grassy clumps. And it's very similar to the sorts of wild onions you might find in some areas of the United States that grow in your lawn. They just look like grass, but they taste like onion. And chives will generally send up a flower at a certain point in the season, and so you've got that kind of attractive aspect to it too. So I use these in my front yard edible landscape, and they look great. They also are a terrific pest distractor, you might say, because some insects that would otherwise attack your plants can get confused by the strong scent of onions and chives and things like that. So when the flowers are out, that's probably a benefit that one might get from having chives. Also, the flowers are great for attracting certain kinds of pollinators and pest predators. So this is an additional benefit to raising chives. So I try to plant some of those in with some of my other plants, and it's always good to have that handy as a sort of an addition to a meal. Next, on the familiar side of these perennial onions are shallots. I'm sure you've seen them in the store. I think this is one of those things that many people don't actually cook with, but you can find them in the store, and these can be grown as perennials. Their growth habit is a lot like garlic, and I haven't grown shallots, but this is what I understand. So when you plant a shallot, it will eventually, over the course of the season, split into several. You can then take the clump of shallots and split them off and take what you need for your kitchen, replant some, and you'll have them again next season. So I haven't planted shallots. I don't know exactly how to plant them and what regions they do best in, but it's, from what I understand, fairly easy perennial onion to grow. So maybe I should be trying those next year. It just never occurred to me, and honestly, I've only cooked with them a few times. It's sort of a smaller, I don't know, if I'm remembering correctly, the flavor, kind of like a nice mild onion flavor, but they're on the smaller side. So if you're looking for a lot of onion kick, it's maybe not the kind of onion to use. Now, getting more into the slightly less familiar, but you may have heard of these before, we're going to move into the walking onions, or the Egyptian onions, the top set onions. And these are called walking onions, top set onions, because what happens is when they shoot up their I don't know if you would call it a scape or a stalk, which is different from the leaves that are more like a spring onion kind of leaf that you get off of these. But when they shoot up, they will at a certain point in the season start shooting up a stalk. That flower stalk will actually turn into bulbettes, little bulbs that can be split. But if you let it go, it will shoot up a stalk from that and form more bulbettes, and it can do this several times. And by the end of the season, this whole thing tips over and drops. And the little bulbettes plant themselves wherever they land, and you have new walking onions. So it kind of, over the course of many seasons, will walk through your garden, and if you're not paying attention to it, can spread quite a bit. That said, mine never spread quite that far because I use them quickly enough that it's not a problem. I have seen friends who just didn't maintain their gardens and ended up having a raised bed full of walking onions because they didn't plant other things and walking onions just took over, which is in some ways a good problem to have, I suppose, if you're eventually going to eat them. So I have just started experimenting with cutting back the flower stalk and focusing the energy of a walking onion on the bulb, the underground bulb itself, in an effort to create a larger bulbed walking onion. I had a little bit of success with that last season, but I'm not at the point where I can say that this is an unmitigated success. In any case, know, however, that it is possible to increase the size of the underground bulbs. Generally, though, walking onions are grown for their leaves, and their leaves are used like spring onions and green onions, the same thing, in cooking. Very similar type of texture, and yet it will come back again and again if used in moderation, of course. And the little bulbettes, I've tried cooking with, and I've recently obtained a type of walking onion that has slightly larger bulbettes, and I'm optimistic once I have enough of these that I might start using these in much the same way you would use garlic. The ones that I'm starting to grow are closer to the size of a garlic clove. We'll see. I have found that these little bulbettes tend to be a milder onion once again, but the ones that I'm able to grow now are more the size of those, the little onions that you will buy around holiday time to cook at Thanksgiving, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that that's more what I can start to harvest off of the tops of these walking onions. Now, getting into slightly more obscure perennial onions is the potato onion. Now, the potato onion is interesting because it's more like the standard onion you're familiar with from the grocery store. And there are larger and smaller varieties. I have a variety which appears to be kind of on the small side, so I may need to branch out and get a larger variety next time. But what they do is they grow in clumps once again, but what's going on under the ground is that you would start with one bulb. That bulb would divide, and eventually it splits into a clump of what look like yellow onions that are all attached at the base. So this is a really much better substitute for your standard kitchen onion. They have a long storage time indoors once you have harvested them, and they do multiply. They're also called multiplier onions. Potato onions are also called multiplier onions, and they do multiply pretty well, and you can then break them apart and spread them throughout your garden. So if you leave them in just one space, they will eventually become cramped, but if you just take the time when you're harvesting, harvest a few and just replant a few right where you are, that will keep this going as a perpetual onion. And now, talking perpetual, there's something called this is our 5th variety. This is the Perpetual Leek. I have not grown Perpetual Leeks, but from what I understand, they are very similar to leeks that you would buy at the supermarket, except smaller. So they have a smaller kind of central leafy stalk that grows up from, once again, a bulb under the ground. The flavor similar to leeks, and yet they are smaller. The benefit is that when you harvest one of these perpetual leeks, you'll generally find that it has split, and there are tiny little leeks growing off of it. And those tiny little leeks can be broken off and then replanted. And you can continue to get leeks this way. It also, if you leave one of these perpetual leeks growing in place for a season or two, it will clump out and grow more like chives, at which point you can have 100 of these to split off and divide around in your garden. So while it is a perennial food, it's one of those foods that you split as you're harvesting. So this is it's not something that you're going to leave in place. And unlike the walking onion, it's not going to move itself around your garden. It's going to stay in one place and kind of grow as a bunch. So the perpetual leek, once again, takes a little more strategy and care, but you will always have, once you have a few perpetual leeks, you will always have these little baby leeks growing off that are very easy to replant and spread around. So that's the benefit of the perpetual leek. So of all of these, personally, my favorite is the walking onion because it spreads itself around and needs the least care. And in many different points in the season, I can go out and harvest several leaves from one of these plants and add it in as an addition to my meal. I haven't had as much luck, like I said, with the bulbs, although I'm working on that by trying to, now that I have enough of them, trying to restrain them from growing these flower stalks that will produce more bulbs and keep all that energy in the bulb below. And I'm optimistic that now that I've got a larger variety, I should be able to make that happen in upcoming years. I'm in touch with other gardeners who do this, and so hopefully that's something I can look forward to in the future. In the meantime, personally, I'm thinking maybe I need some perpetual leeks. I'm not sure. Maybe I've got enough between the chives and the walking onions and the potato onions. So I'd like to know your experience with these plants. Which is your favorite? Have you tried any of them? Are you hoping to try some of them? Give me a thumbs up if you would, and leave your comments below. Also, please be in touch on the Food Forest Garden Club website. There is a Contact Us form there. And if you would like to join the club, you're absolutely welcome to. We have online Zoom chats every couple of weeks where we're talking about our plants, talking about what we're doing this season, what we've learned, how we've succeeded, and sometimes how we failed. So look forward to seeing you there. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great day.